My daughter called me to check if I was sitting in my favorite chair. I thought it was an act of kindness from a child I had been fighting with for months. I told her I was. 2 minutes later, the ceiling collapsed on top of me. When I woke up in the hospital, I thought I had survived a tragic accident due to an old, rotting house. But when the police told me what they found in the wooden beams, I realized that phone call wasn't love. It was a target confirmation. I spent my life building a home for my family, but I never realized I was housing the very pests that would try to destroy me. Please verify that you have subscribed to the channel. It helps us bring you these stories every single day. Go ahead and click that button now, and leave a comment below guessing who you think is really behind the collapse before the story ends. The house was not just a structure of wood and brick to me. It was a living memory of the 40 years I spent with my wife Martha. We bought the land in 1982, back when this part of the state was mostly just cornfields and empty lots. I was a younger man then, full of arrogance and energy, and I decided to build a lot of it myself with the help of some contractors I knew from the trade. I remember laying the floorboards in the living room, sweating through my shirt, while Martha sat on a cooler drinking iced tea, pointing out where she wanted the piano to go. That piano sat in the exact same spot for 4 decades. The house was my pride. It was solid. It was American oak and red brick. It was supposed to outlive me. When Martha passed away 6 months ago, the house became a mausoleum. I walked the halls at night, tracing my hand along the wallpaper she had picked out, trying to catch a lingering scent of her perfume. It was a lonely existence, but it was my existence, and I intended to stay there until they carried me out in a box. My daughter Lisa saw it differently. To Lisa, the house was just a pile of equity that was inconveniently trapped in drywall and timber. Lisa is 25. She is part of a generation I struggle to understand, but I loved her furiously because she had her mother's eyes. However, she did not have her mother's patience or her mother's sense of duty. Lisa had always been looking for the shortcut. She bounced from major to major in college, never finishing. Then it was a string of business ideas that required seed capital from me. First, it was an organic dog treat bakery, then a drop shipping business, and finally a tech startup that I still don't fully comprehend. The argument started a week after the funeral. I was still in the fog of grief, barely able to remember to eat, when Lisa came over with a folder full of spreadsheets. She sat at the kitchen table, pushed aside a stack of condolence cards, and told me we needed to talk about liquidating assets. She was in deep. She had gambling debts she tried to call investment losses, and she owed money to people you shouldn't owe money to. She demanded I sell the house. She said it was too big for one old man. She said the market was hot and we could cash out, giving her the share she claimed was rightfully hers from her mother's estate. I told her no. I told her that her mother's will left everything to me as long as I was alive, and that the house was not for sale. That was the first time I saw the hate in her eyes. It wasn't just frustration. It was a cold, reptilian stare that made my skin crawl. She stood up, knocking her chair over, and screamed that I was a selfish old miser who cared more about wood and plaster than his own flesh and blood. She stormed out, peeling her tires out of the driveway. Things were quiet for a few weeks after that. Too quiet. Then the tone shifted. Lisa started calling me. She wasn't apologizing exactly, but she was softer. She asked how I was eating. She asked if I was lonely. She started coming over to visit, which she hadn't done without asking for money in years. One afternoon, about a week before the incident, she came by with empty boxes. She said she wanted to go through the basement to find some old photo albums and some of her mother's college books. She said she wanted to feel close to her mom. I felt a pang of guilt for being so hard on her. I let her in. I made coffee in the kitchen while she went downstairs. I remember hearing the heavy thud of her boots on the wooden stairs. She was down there for a long time, maybe 2 hours. I offered to come down and help her, but she shouted up that she was fine, that she just wanted some privacy to cry. I respected that. I sat in the kitchen, drinking my coffee, thinking that maybe we were turning a corner. When she came up, she looked flushed, sweaty even, and she had a box of books. She hugged me stiffly and left. The day of the collapse was a humid Tuesday. The air was thick, the kind of weather that makes your joints ache. I had spent the morning in the garden, and by 1 o'clock I was exhausted. I went into the living room to rest. My favorite chair, a heavy leather recliner that had molded to the shape of my back over 20 years, sat directly in the center of the room, right under the main exposed beam that spanned the width of the ceiling. That beam was a massive piece of timber, 12 inches thick, dark-stained and rustic. It was the spine of the house. I sat down and closed my eyes. The house was silent, settling in the heat. The phone rang. It was Lisa. I picked it up. "Hello?" "Dad," she said. Her voice sounded tight, almost breathless. "Are you home?" "Yes, Lisa. Where else would I be?" Are you in the living room?" she asked. "I am." "Are you sitting in your chair, the leather one?" I thought it was a strange question, but I chalked it up to her worrying about my back. I had been complaining about sciatica. "Yes, I'm sitting in the chair. Why?" "Just checking," she said. "I wanted to make sure you were comfortable. Stay there, okay? Just relax." "I will," I said. "Thanks for checking in, honey." "Goodbye, Dad." She hung up. I put the phone down on the side table. I leaned my head back and closed my eyes again. I felt a sense of peace. Maybe she really did care. Then I heard it. It started as a groan. A deep, guttural sound coming from the ceiling, like a ship straining in a storm. I opened my eyes and looked up. Dust was trickling down from the dark wood of the beam. It looked like snow in the shaft of sunlight coming through the window. Crack! The sound was like a gunshot, loud and sharp. I tried to push myself up, but my body was too slow. The massive beam, the spine of my home, sheared in half directly above me. I saw the splintered wood rushing toward my face. I raised my hands in a futile attempt to protect myself. Then, darkness, and a weight that crushed the air out of my lungs. I don't know how long I was out. I remember waking up in flashes. I remember the sound of sirens. I remember the shouting of men. "He's under the main beam. Get the jack. Heavy lift required." I remember the pain, a white-hot agony in my leg and a throbbing pressure in my skull. I remember being dragged across the floor, the grit of the drywall dust in my mouth. When I fully regained consciousness, I was in the ICU. Beeping machines. Tubes in my arm. My leg was in a traction cast, suspended in the air. My head was wrapped in bandages. A doctor came in. Dr. Evans. He told me I was lucky to be alive. I had a severe concussion, 3 broken ribs, and a compound fracture of the right tibia. If the beam had hit me 6 inches to the left, it would have crushed my skull. I lay there for 2 days, grateful but confused. Houses don't just fall down. That beam was solid oak. It had been inspected 5 years ago. On the 3rd day, the door opened, and it wasn't a nurse. It was a man in a cheap suit with a badge on his belt. Detective Miller. He pulled up a chair and looked at me with a face that had seen too much bad news. "Mr. Arthur," he said, "we need to talk about the accident." "It was old wood," I rasped, my throat dry. "Termites, maybe?" "Termites, yes," Miller said. He pulled a plastic bag out of his pocket. Inside was a chunk of wood. It looked like a sponge. But not just termites. Forensic engineers examined the beam. It was infested with Captivate formosanus. Formosan termites. They're aggressive, sure, but they don't eat this fast naturally. He leaned in closer. "We found drill marks, Mr. Arthur. Microchannels, about the width of a needle, drilled deep into the core of the beam, specifically in the section directly above your recliner. And inside those channels, residue of a high-concentration glucose and cellulose solution. Someone baited them. Someone drilled holes to guide them to that exact spot and fed them to accelerate the decay. This wasn't nature. This was a demolition charge made of insects. The room spun. Attempted murder. Who had access to the house? Miller asked. My mind raced. The gardener? No, he never came inside. The mailman? No. David? David was my best friend, but he hadn't been over in weeks. He was busy with a contract out of town. Then the memory hit me. The basement. The boots on the stairs. The 2 hours of crying. The sweat on her forehead. My daughter, I whispered. Lisa. The detective nodded slowly. We looked into her financials, sir. She's drowning. And we saw the will. If you die, she gets everything immediately. The insurance payout alone on a house like that, plus the life insurance policy. I closed my eyes, tears leaking out. She called me, I said, my voice shaking. Right before it fell. She asked if I was sitting in the chair. The detective's pen stopped moving. She confirmed your position? Yes. That was the nail in the coffin. I testified against her. I had to. I sat in a wheelchair in the courtroom, my legs still healing, and looked at my own daughter in the defendant's chair. She looked small, scared. She screamed that she didn't do it. She screamed that I was crazy. I loved Mom, she yelled. I wouldn't destroy her house. I wouldn't kill you. But the evidence was overwhelming. The access. The motive. The phone call. The prosecution painted a picture of a greedy, desperate child waiting for her inheritance, deciding to speed up the process. The drill marks in the wood were the smoking gun. Someone had to put them there, and she was the only one inside the house for a significant time in the weeks leading up to the collapse. The jury didn't take long. Guilty. Attempted murder in the first degree. Property damage. Insurance fraud. She was sentenced to 12 years. I watched the bailiffs lead her away. She stopped at the door, looked back at me, and her eyes weren't angry anymore. They were just empty. You're wrong, she mouthed. Then she was gone. I felt like I had carved out a piece of my own soul. But justice is justice, right? I had survived a murder attempt. I had to protect myself. After the trial, I was discharged from physical therapy, but I had nowhere to go. The house was condemned. It was a pile of rubble and yellow caution tape. I moved into a cheap motel on the edge of town, the kind of place where the neon sign buzzes all night and the neighbors don't make eye contact. I spent my days sitting in the motel room staring at the wall. I felt heavy. I had done the right thing, hadn't I? But the look on her face haunted me. You're wrong. I needed closure. I needed to clean up the mess. I drove my rental car back to the house. It was a gray, drizzling afternoon. The ruins of my life lay wet and smelling of mold. I had to meet the insurance adjuster to sign off on the total loss so the demolition crew could come in and clear the lot. I walked up the driveway, leaning heavily on my cane. The mailbox was still standing, miraculously untouched by the devastation. It was a sturdy steel box I had installed 10 years ago. I opened it, mostly out of habit. It was full of soggy flyers and final notices for utility bills I no longer needed to pay. I grabbed the handful of wet paper to toss it in the trash, but something stuck to the bottom of the metal caught my eye. It was a small, thermal paper receipt, crumpled into a ball and shoved into the very back corner, likely by the mail carrier jamming a magazine in too hard weeks ago. I pulled it out and carefully unrolled it. The thermal ink was faded but legible. It was from Valley Landscaping and Pest Control Supply. The items listed: pheromone attractant, termite specific, 1 gallon, industrial glucose compound, 1/16-inch carbide drill bits. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was the shopping list for the murder weapon. I looked at the date. October 12th. Time, 2:15 p.m. I froze. October 12th was a Tuesday. I remembered that day vividly because it was the day Lisa's car had broken down. I had driven her to the bank for a loan modification meeting. We were sitting in the waiting room from 1:30 p.m. until 4 p.m. I was with her the entire time. There were cameras at the bank. There were witnesses. Lisa could not have bought these items. The world tilted on its axis. If Lisa didn't buy the materials, she didn't set the trap. And if she didn't set the trap, she was sitting in a prison cell for a crime she didn't commit. I stood there in the rain, the receipt trembling in my hand. Someone else had done this. Someone else had wanted me dead. And whoever it was, they had framed my daughter so perfectly that even her own father had hammered the gavel down on her life. I looked at the bottom of the receipt. The last 4 digits of the credit card used were visible. MasterCard, ending in 8842. I didn't recognize the number, but I knew I was going to find out who owned it. And when I did, God help them. I stood in the rain for what felt like an hour, staring at that receipt until the paper started to dissolve in my hands. The ink was blurring, but the truth was etched into my mind. Valley Landscaping, October 12th, 2:15 p.m. Lisa was with me. She was innocent, and I had sent her to a concrete box to rot for 12 years. The guilt hit me harder than the beam had. It was a physical blow to the gut. I doubled over, retching bile onto the wet asphalt of my driveway. I had been so sure. I had been so righteous. I had played the part of the grieving, betrayed father perfectly, while the real monster was still out there, laughing at me. I scrambled into my rental car, throwing my cane into the passenger seat. I didn't go to the police station. Not yet. I needed to be sure. I needed to know who held that credit card ending in 8842. I needed to look the devil in the face before I handed him over to the law. I drove to Valley Landscaping. It was a rundown supply depot in the industrial park, the kind of place that sold bulk fertilizer and professional-grade poisons. The bell above the door chimed as I limped in. The air smelled of sulfur and sawdust. A young man with grease under his fingernails was sitting behind the counter scrolling on his phone. I slapped the soggy receipt onto the counter. "I need to know who bought this," I said, my voice low and dangerous. The kid looked up, unimpressed. "Store policy, man. Can't give out customer info." I slammed my hand down. "Listen to me, son. My house collapsed because of what was bought on this receipt. People almost died. Now you can help me, or you can explain to the homicide detectives why you obstructed an investigation." He swallowed hard. He looked at the receipt, then typed something into his ancient computer. "That was 3 weeks ago," he muttered. "Big order. Weird stuff. Glucose and pheromones. We don't sell that combo often." "Who bought it?" "It was a cash sale for part of it, card for the rest," he said. "Name on the card was—" "Hold on. D. Miller." D. Miller. My blood ran cold. David Miller. David, my best friend. The man who sat in the front row at my wife's funeral. The man who had helped me build the deck 3 summers ago. The man who had held Lisa when she was a baby. "Do you have cameras?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Yeah, outside," the kid said. He turned the monitor. "I can pull up the timestamp." He clicked a few buttons. A grainy black and white video feed appeared. October 12th, 2:10 p.m. A truck pulled into the loading bay. It wasn't just a truck. It was a dark green Ford F-150 with a distinctive dent on the rear bumper and a custom rack over the bed. I knew that truck better than I knew my own car. I had ridden in that truck 1,000 times. A man got out. He was wearing a baseball cap pulled low, but I recognized the walk. The heavy, rolling gait of a man with bad knees. He loaded the canisters into the back of the truck. He looked around nervously, then got in and drove away. It was David. I stumbled back from the counter. The world wasn't making sense. Why? Why would David do this? He was family in everything but blood. He had no reason to hurt me. He had no reason to frame Lisa, unless— A dark thought took root in my mind. I thanked the clerk and rushed back to my car. I needed answers, and I knew where to find them. I didn't go to David's house. I went back to the motel. I needed to dig into the past. If you're enjoying this story, and want to see how the investigation unfolds, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. We post daily stories of betrayal and justice. Click the bell icon so you never miss a part. Back in the motel room, I opened my laptop. I logged into my late wife Martha's cloud account. I had avoided doing this for months because it felt like an invasion of privacy, but now, privacy was a luxury I couldn't afford. I guessed the password on the second try. It was the date we got engaged. I started scrolling through her emails. Thousands of recipes, knitting circles, and spam. But then I searched for David. The results filled the screen. There were hundreds of emails, going back 10 years. I clicked on one from a year ago. Martha, I deposited the money. Don't tell Arthur. I know he has his pride. But you need this for the medical bills. I'm always here for you. Always have been. D. Another one from 3 years ago. I can't stand seeing you unhappy, Martha. He doesn't appreciate you. He's stuck in his ways. You deserve the world. If you ever decide to leave him, my door is open. I felt sick. My wife hadn't been having an affair, at least not in these emails, but David was clearly obsessed with her. He was the white knight, the benevolent savior waiting in the wings. He was lending her money I didn't know we needed, and buying her affection with emotional support while I was busy working to pay off the mortgage. Then I found the email from the week after the funeral. I can't believe he's keeping the house, Lisa. It's a shrine to his own ego. Your mother wanted you to have that money. I promised her I'd look out for you. I won't let him rob you of your future. I froze. He was emailing Lisa? I checked the recipient. It wasn't Lisa's email. It was a draft. He had written it but never sent it. Or maybe he had said it to her in person. The picture was forming in my mind, hideous and clear. David loved Martha. He hated me for having her. When she died, his connection to her was gone, except for the house and Lisa. I was the obstacle. I was the miser sitting on the pile of gold, refusing to sell the house that David likely felt belonged to Martha, and by extension, to him. He decided to take me out. He used his knowledge as a contractor to engineer the collapse. He bought the termites. He drilled the holes, and he framed Lisa, not to hurt her, but to ensure that when I was out of the way, she would get the insurance money. He probably thought the police wouldn't look too closely at a grieving daughter if the house just fell down due to bugs. But when I survived and the police found the sabotage, he panicked. He let Lisa take the fall because he was a coward. Or maybe he thought he could save her later with his money. I grabbed my phone and called my lawyer, Mr. Henderson. It was 8 p.m., but he picked up. Arthur, what's wrong? I made a mistake, I said, my voice breaking. We made a terrible mistake. Lisa is innocent. Arthur, the trial is over. She was convicted. I have proof, I shouted. I have the receipt for the termites. Lisa was with me when they were bought. It was David Miller. I have him on camera. There was a long silence on the other end. Stay where you are, Henderson said. I'm calling the district attorney. Don't go near David. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the window watching the rain, hating myself. I had failed my daughter. I had failed my wife. I had let a snake into our garden and fed him from my table. The next morning, everything moved at lightning speed. I met Henderson and the lead detective at the station. I handed over the receipt and the USB drive with the video footage I had recorded from the store clerk's monitor. The detective's face turned grim. This changes everything, he said. They obtained a search warrant for David's property within hours. I wasn't allowed to go with them, but I parked my car down the street from David's house and watched. I saw the SWAT team stack up at the door. I saw them kick it in. 20 minutes later, they brought David out in handcuffs. He looked pale, shocked. He wasn't the confident friend I knew. He looked like a rat caught in a trap. Later that afternoon, the detective called me. We got him, Arthur. We found the drill in his garage. We found residue of the glucose solution in a mixing bucket, and we found a map of your house with the structural weak points highlighted. He marked the beam above your chair with a red X. And Lisa? I asked. The DA is filing a motion to vacate the conviction. She'll be released pending the formal exoneration hearing. It might take a few days to process the paperwork, but she's coming home. I wept. I sat in the police station waiting room and cried like a child. I was going to get my daughter back. I was going to spend the rest of my life making it up to her. I would sell the land. I would give her every penny. We would start over. But the universe wasn't done with me yet. The stress of the last few days had taken a toll on my body. My leg, which was still healing from the crush injury, started to throb violently. I looked down and saw the skin around the cast was red and hot to the touch. I felt dizzy, feverish. I collapsed in the hallway of the police station. When I woke up, I was back in the hospital. The same white ceiling, the same smell. Dr. Evans was there again. He looked concerned. "Arthur, you developed a secondary infection in the bone. Osteomyelitis. We had to go in and clean it out. You lost a lot of blood." "Am I okay?" I asked weaky. "You're stable," he said. "But we need to keep you here for a week on IV antibiotics. It was touch and go for a minute. We had to give you 2 units of blood." He checked his clipboard, then looked at me with a strange expression. "You know, it's a funny thing," he said, trying to make small talk. "We were looking at your file from the first admission. Remember when we asked if family could donate?" "Yeah," I said. "Lisa offered, but she was in jail." "Well," Dr. Evans said, "it's a good thing we didn't rely on that. I was looking at her preliminary screening from when she volunteered at the blood drive last year. We ran a cross-match just to update your files." He paused, tapping his pen on the chart. "It's biologically impossible." "What is?" I asked, my brain still foggy from the anesthesia. "For her to be your donor," he said. "And I don't mean just blood type. I mean, Arthur, I don't know how to tell you this, but based on the genetic markers we see in her file and yours, she's not your biological daughter." The air left the room. "What did you say?" "There are certain markers," he said, realizing he might have stepped over a line but committed to the truth. "Hereditary traits. You don't have them. She does. It's a clear mismatch. The probability of you being her biological father is 0. I stared at him. The buzzing of the fluorescent lights sounded like a scream in my ears. Lisa wasn't my daughter. I tried to sit up, ignoring the pain in my leg. "Check it again." "We did," he said gently. "We double-checked when we saw the anomaly. Arthur, I'm sorry." I sank back into the pillows. My mind was reeling, trying to reassemble the pieces of a puzzle I thought I had already solved. Lisa wasn't mine. Then whose was she? I thought about the timeline. 26 years ago. Martha and I had hit a rough patch. I was working long hours, traveling for business. Martha had been lonely. And who was around? Who was always around? David, the green truck, the emails. "I'm always here for you." The money. A cold realization washed over me, colder than the rain, colder than the grave. David wasn't just obsessed with my wife. He had been with my wife. Lisa was his daughter. The pieces started to click together, but they formed a picture so horrific I didn't want to look at it. If Lisa was David's daughter, did she know? I thought about the receipt. David bought the termites. David drilled the holes. But David couldn't just walk into my house and spend hours in the basement drilling holes without me noticing. He needed access. He needed a window of time. I remembered the week before the collapse. Lisa coming over. I want to look for old photos. Spending 2 hours in the basement, the sound of her boots, the sweat on her forehead when she came up. She wasn't crying down there. She was working. And the phone call. "Dad, are you in the chair?" I had convinced myself she was checking on me out of love. Then I convinced myself she was innocent and the call was just a coincidence. But if she was working with David, if she knew he was her real father? I grabbed the phone from the bedside table. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely dial. I needed to talk to David. I needed to look him in the eye one last time. I called the detective. I need to see David Miller, now. Arthur, you're in the hospital, and he's in holding. You can't. I have information about the motive, I yelled. I know why he did it, and I need to confirm it before you let Lisa out. What are you talking about? Lisa is innocent. You proved it. I was wrong, I whispered. I was only half right. Don't release her. Not yet. Get me into that visitation room. I signed myself out of the hospital against medical advice. I didn't care about the infection. I didn't care if my leg fell off. I took a cab to the county jail. I limped through the security checkpoint, my face pale, my eyes burning. They brought David into the room. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit. He looked broken. He thought he was done. He thought I had caught him and saved Lisa. I sat down opposite him. The glass partition separated us. I picked up the phone. He picked up his. Arthur, he said, his voice a croak. I'm sorry, I never meant for you to die. It was just supposed to be the house. Cut the crap, David, I said. My voice was calm, eerily calm. I know. Know what? I know she's yours. David's eyes went wide. The color drained from his face. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. I know Lisa is your daughter, I said. The doctors told me. Genetic mismatch. David slumped in his chair. He put his head in his hands. Martha, she never wanted you to know. We made a mistake. Only once. But I loved her, Arthur. I loved her more than you ever could. And Lisa? I asked. Does she know? David looked up. His eyes were wet. She found out. After Martha died, she found the letters. So she knows you're her father, I said. Yes. I leaned closer to the glass. I'm going to ask you one question, David. And if you lie to me, I will make sure you die in this prison. Did she help you? David hesitated. He looked at the camera in the corner of the room. He looked at me. No, he said. It was all me. She didn't know about the termites. She's innocent, Arthur. I did it for her. I wanted her to have the money. I wanted to get rid of you so I could be a father to her. He was lying. I could see it in the twitch of his eye. He was trying to protect her. I decided to play my final card. A bluff. A cruel, necessary bluff. You're lying, David, I said smoothly. Because I just spoke to Lisa's lawyer. She's cutting a deal. David froze. What? She's pinning it all on you, I lied. She told the DA that you forced her to let you in. She said you threatened her. She's testifying that you are the sole architect and she was a victim of your manipulation. She's going to walk free, and you're going to get life without parole. David's face twisted. The sorrow vanished, replaced by a flash of rage. She said that? She said you were just a creepy old friend of her mother's who wouldn't leave her alone, I added, twisting the knife. She said she hates you. That broke him. David slammed the phone against the glass. That ungrateful little bitch, he screamed. The guard behind him stepped forward, but David waved him off. I did everything for her. It was her idea. Tell me, I commanded. She came to me, David yelled, his spit hitting the glass. She found out I was her dad, and she came to me. She said she hated you. She said you were stingy and cold and you were hoarding her mother's money. She said she wished you were dead. I felt a piece of my heart die, but I kept my face stone. Go on. I told her I could fix the house, David spat. I told her I could make it collapse so she'd get the insurance. I bought the stuff, but I couldn't get inside. You were always there. She did it. She took the drill. She spent 3 days drilling those holes while you were gardening. She injected the glucose. She set the trap." "And the phone call?" I asked. "She called to make sure you were in the chair." David laughed, a manic, hysterical sound. "She wanted you dead, Arthur. She didn't just want the money. She wanted you gone so we could be a family. Me and her. She used me. And now she's trying to pin it on me?" He was screaming now, confessing everything to the recording device that was surely running. "She's the monster, Arthur, not me. She checked the target. She gave the order." I hung up the phone. I stared at him for a moment. The man who had been my friend. The father of the girl I raised. "She didn't cut a deal, David," I said to the glass, though he couldn't hear me anymore. "But she will now." I stood up and turned to the detective who was standing by the door, his jaw on the floor. "Did you get all that?" I asked. The detective nodded slowly. "Every word." "Good," I said. "Now go get her." I walked out of the jail into the bright afternoon sun. It was over. The truth was out. But there was no victory. There was only a vast, empty silence where my family used to be. I sat in the passenger seat of the detective's unmarked car, watching the entrance of the county jail release center. The engine was idling, a low rumble that vibrated through the floorboards and up into my aching leg. It was raining again. It seems like it has been raining ever since the house fell, as if the sky itself is trying to wash away the sins of my family. "Are you sure you want to be here for this, Mr. Arthur?" Detective Miller asked. He was watching me in the rearview mirror, his eyes filled with a mixture of pity and professional concern. "You should be in a hospital bed. You look like hell." "I need to see her face," I said, staring at the steel doors. "I need to see the moment she realizes the game is over. If I don't see it, I'll never believe it." We waited. The paperwork to vacate a conviction usually takes days, but the paperwork to arrest someone for conspiracy to commit murder moves much faster, especially when you have a taped confession from a co-conspirator. The plan was simple. They were going to let Lisa process out. They wanted her to taste freedom. They wanted her to walk through those doors, take a breath of fresh air, and think she had won. They wanted her guard down. At 4:15 p.m., the heavy steel door buzzed and swung open. Lisa stepped out. She looked different than she had in the courtroom. She wasn't wearing the jumpsuit anymore. She was wearing the clothes she had been arrested in, jeans and a gray sweater. She looked thin, pale, but there was a spring in her step. She paused at the top of the stairs, took a deep breath, and closed her eyes. A small, satisfied smile played on her lips. It wasn't the smile of someone who was traumatized by a wrongful conviction. It was the smile of a chess player who had just checkmated the king. She started walking down the steps, pulling her phone out of her pocket, likely to call a ride, or perhaps to call David, not knowing he was currently being booked into a solitary cell just a few hundred yards away. "Now," the detective whispered into his radio. 2 patrol cars swooped in from the sides, lights flashing but sirens silent. Lisa froze. She looked confused, squinting at the lights. She probably thought they were there for someone else. She kept walking. Then the officers stepped out, guns drawn, pointing directly at her. "Lisa Miller," one of them shouted. They didn't call her by my last name. They used David's. A subtle psychological blow, or maybe just a clerical error, but it felt poignant. "Get on the ground! Now!" The look on her face shifted from confusion to pure, unadulterated terror. She dropped her phone. It shattered on the wet pavement. "What? No, I was just released. You can't do this. I'm innocent. My father proved it." I rolled down the window. She saw me. Her eyes locked onto mine. For a split second, she looked relieved. She shouted, "Dad! Dad! Tell them! Tell them it was David!" I didn't say a word. I just looked at her. I looked at the girl I had taught to ride a bike. I looked at the woman who had sat at my kitchen table and demanded her inheritance. I looked at the stranger who had drilled holes in the roof of my home to kill me. I held up my phone. I pressed play on the recording of David's confession, though she couldn't hear it from that distance. I just pointed to the phone, then pointed to her. Her face crumpled. The mask fell off. The daddy's girl act evaporated, replaced by a snarl of pure hatred. She didn't get on the ground. She lunged toward my car, screaming, before the officers tackled her. "I hope you die," she shrieked as they cuffed her hands behind her back. "You should have died in that chair. You useless old man. You stole my life." They dragged her away, kicking and screaming. I rolled the window up. The silence returned to the car. "You okay?" the detective asked. "No," I said, "but I'm ready to finish this." The interrogation happened an hour later. I was allowed to watch from the observation room behind the one-way mirror. My leg was throbbing with a dull, rhythmic pain, but the adrenaline kept me upright. Lisa sat at the metal table, handcuffed to the ring in the floor. She wasn't crying. She was seething. She stared at the wall, her jaw clenched tight. Detective Miller walked in and sat down opposite her. He placed a file on the table. "So," he started, "David told us everything." "David is a liar," Lisa spat. "He's a sick old man who is obsessed with my mother. He did it all. He's trying to frame me because I rejected him." "We have the DNA test, Lisa," Miller said calmly. "We know he's your father, and we know you knew." She flinched. That was the crack in the armor. "And," Miller continued, leaning in, "we have the recording. He gave us the details, Lisa. Details only the person inside the house would know. He told us about the drill you used. He told us where you hid the glucose solution, in the old paint cans in the basement. We sent a team back to the site. We found the cans in the rubble. They have your fingerprints on them." Lisa went silent. She stared at the table. She was calculating. She was looking for a way out, a loop, a lie that could save her. But the net was too tight. Finally, she laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. "He was supposed to be smarter than this," she muttered. "David, he was supposed to be the engineer, the genius." "Why, Lisa?" Miller asked. "Arthur raised you. He loved you. Why kill him?" She looked up at the mirror as if she knew I was standing there. Her eyes were black pits. "He didn't love me," she said, her voice dripping with venom. "He loved his little idea of a family. He loved his house. He loved his rules. He controlled everything. Money, my career, my life. He sat on that pile of cash like a dragon, watching me struggle." "He supported you for years," Miller countered. "He threw me scraps," she shouted, slamming her hand on the table. "My mother wanted me to have that money. David told me. David told me that Mom was miserable with him, that Arthur was boring, stifling, a dead weight. David loved us. David actually gave a damn about my dreams, but he couldn't do anything as long as Arthur was alive. As long as Arthur was the executor, I was a prisoner to his allowance." She leaned back, a twisted look of pride on her face. "It was a good plan," she said. "It really was. Termites, nature, an act of God, no murder weapon, no bullet, just gravity. It was poetic." "You drilled the holes," Miller stated. "Took me 3 days," she bragged. "I told him I was looking for photo albums. I was down there with a cordless drill and a syringe. I injected the sugar water right into the heart of the beam. I could hear them, you know, the termites. If you put your ear to the wood, you could hear them chewing. It sounded like rain." I felt bile rise in my throat. She had listened to the sound of my death being prepared, and she had smiled. "And the phone call?" Miller asked. "The day of the collapse." Lisa smirked. "I had to be sure. David said the beam was ready to go. He said it was hanging by a thread. But we needed Arthur in the chair. If he was in the kitchen or the garden, he might just get hurt. We needed him crushed, so I called him." You confirmed the target, Miller said, writing in his notebook. I asked him if he was comfortable, she said, her voice mocking. I told him to relax. I wanted him to be sitting still. I wanted him to be happy right before the lights went out. She looked at the mirror again. Are you watching, Arthur? She hissed. I know you're there. I'm glad you survived. You know why? Because now you get to die slow. You get to die knowing that your wife cheated on you, that your daughter hates you, that your best friend wanted to kill you. You have nothing. You are nothing. Detective Miller stood up. That's enough. You're being charged with conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, and insurance fraud. Worth it, she whispered. The trial was a spectacle. The local news ate it up. The termite house murder plot. They called Lisa the Black Widow daughter. I didn't attend every day. I couldn't. My health was failing. The infection in my leg had weakened me, and the stress was taking its toll on my heart. But I was there for the verdict. I sat in the back row, leaning on my cane. Lisa sat with her public defender. David testified against her. He took a plea deal, 15 years in exchange for full cooperation. He looked old, broken, a shell of the man I knew. He cried on the stand when he talked about Martha. He claimed he was manipulated by Lisa, that he only wanted to help his daughter, but the jury saw through him. He was the architect. She was the executioner. They were both monsters. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, guilty on all counts. The judge was a stern woman who had no patience for matricide or patricide. She looked at Lisa with open disgust. Ms. Miller, the judge said, using her biological father's name, which Lisa had legally adopted during the trial in a final act of defiance against me. Your actions were cold, calculated, and cruel. You didn't just try to kill a man. You tried to destroy the very sanctuary of his home. You used his love against him. You weaponized his trust. Lisa stood there, stone-faced. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She just stared at the judge with that same reptilian gaze. I sentence you to 25 years to life in the state penitentiary, the judge said, with no possibility of parole for the first 20 years. David got 15 years. He would likely die in prison. When the bailiffs led Lisa away, she didn't look back at me. She didn't look at David. She walked out with her head high, convinced, I suppose, that she was the victim of a cruel world that refused to give her what she was owed. It has been 6 months since the trial. My leg never fully healed. I walk with a permanent limp now, a constant reminder of the day the sky fell. The doctors say I'm lucky to have kept the leg at all. I sold the land. I couldn't rebuild there. The soil felt poisoned. I sold it to a developer who paved over the garden and put up a row of townhouses. I drove by the other day. It looks clean, sterile, new. You would never know that a family lived there for 40 years. You would never know that a man sat in a chair and listened to his daughter tell him to die. I live in a small apartment now, closer to the city. It's quiet. No stairs, no basement, no exposed beams, just concrete and steel. I have spent a lot of time thinking about Martha. I tried to hate her for the affair. I tried to hate her for the lie. But I can't. I think about how lonely she must have been. I think about how busy I was, building my empire of dirt, thinking that providing a house was the same as providing a home. I don't forgive her exactly, but I understand. She was human. We were all flawed. But Lisa was something else. Yesterday I went through the last box of things I had salvaged from the rubble. It was mostly trash, but at the bottom I found that photo album. The one Lisa had pretended to look for while she was drilling holes in my ceiling. I sat on my balcony and opened it. There were pictures of Lisa as a baby, pictures of her first birthday, pictures of her graduation, pictures of me holding her, looking at her with so much pride my chest felt like it would burst. I looked at her eyes in the photos. I tried to find the monster. Was it always there? Was it in the way she looked at her presents? Was it in the way she threw tantrums? Or did we make it? Did David's whispers and my emotional distance create the perfect storm? It doesn't matter now. I took a lighter from my pocket. I lit the corner of the album. The plastic cover bubbled and hissed, releasing a black, acrid smoke. I watched the flames eat the faces. I watched my wife smile and disappear. I watched my daughter laugh and turn to ash. I let it burn until it was nothing but gray flakes in the wind. I am alone. I have no wife. I have no child. I have no best friend. My legacy is gone. My house is gone. But as I sat there, watching the sun go down over the city skyline, I took a deep breath. My lungs filled with air. My heart beat steady and strong in my chest. Lisa wanted me dead. She wanted me crushed. She wanted to erase me so she could consume what I had built. But she failed. I stood up, gripping the railing of the balcony. I am 71 years old. I am broken. I am scarred. But I am still here. I went inside and made myself a cup of coffee. I sat in a new chair, a sturdy one with a metal frame. I turned on the TV. The termites didn't win. The rot didn't win. I survived. And for the first time in a long time, the silence in the room didn't feel empty. It felt like peace. Thank you for listening to this story. It's a hard one to tell, but I believe the truth always has to come out, even if it brings the house down with it. If you enjoyed this narration and want to support the channel, please hit the like button and subscribe, and let me know in the comments. Do you think Arthur should have forgiven Martha for the affair, or was the lie too big? I'll see you in the next video.
My grandpa's worst really happened. I believe him. If you want more true tales like this, hit subscribe.